Copy, Hog 01. Once more.
Yeah, we see you safe. I see you safe. Bring it in.
Night Owl, Hog 01. Friendlies in sight, target in sight, in from the south.
In from the south, you're cleared hot, cleared hot. Both Hog elements, good guns, good guns.
Welcome to the Pathway to Wings podcast, a podcast for aspiring Air Force aviators, and hosted by current and former Air Force aviators. I'm your host, Major John Waters. I'm a former F-16 pilot and now an Air Force reservist working for the recruiting service. My guest today is Captain Ilma Vallee. She's a KC-135 pilot and now instructs remotely piloted aircraft students. She has quite the journey. She immigrated from Eastern Europe, not speaking any English. She enlisted in the Air Force and then became an officer. I think you're going to enjoy her story and her pathway to wings. Let's get into the podcast with Captain Ilma Vallee. Awesome. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I have Captain Ilma Vallee. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Look at that for a Georgia boy. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about your aviation career and your path through the Air Force. So again, before you're rolling the podcast, maybe if you give us a 30 to 60 second kind of elevator pitch of who you are, a little bit about your Air Force career and what you're doing today.
All right. Well, hello. Yes. So crazy story. Ilma, born and raised in Eastern Europe, was born in Lithuania, immigrated to United States at age 11, enlisted in the Air Force, started out as a cook in the Air Force. Then I went to the prep school, the Air Force Academy, pilot training, Del Rio, Texas, and then KC-135s. Had some medical issues, which brought me here to Randolph, and now teaching our future drone pilots how to fly. So RPA training schoolhouse.
I'm excited about this. There's going to be a lot to talk about. Just from the beginning, immigrating to the United States, what were you English speaker at that time, or did you have to learn the language?
So while living in Lithuania, we took English classes. So that was part of our curriculum, elementary school, middle school, you take English classes the way we take Spanish classes here in America. But I mean, your English is like, hello, goodbye. And that's pretty much all I knew when I immigrated to United States. So definitely a challenge, fifth grader, expressing words and feelings, and that was not fun. Got a little bit made fun of from my accent too, but that was quite the ride.
Yeah, getting thrown in the deep end. I cannot imagine. That's what I always say. Like, I have no excuse, right? Because if you show up and you speak the language, like, then it's just easy,
Exactly.
So no excuse for me.
Exactly.
What got you hooked into aviation? Want to pursue a career in the Air Force?
So, I guess my love for aviation started out actually when I got on a flight to move to United States. My first time on an airplane was oceanic from Lithuania. Well, it was probably from Frankfurt across the ocean to Los Angeles. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so awesome, so beautiful. And in my 11-year-old mind, I thought being a pilot would mean lots of traveling, lots of awesome photos. I didn't realize how much more there was to that. But that's when I fell in love with it. It's like, sign me up. I'll get to learn languages and I'll get to travel the world. And then I went on to high school, and that dream was still with me. My parents did the best that they could. And, they're like, hey, here's a magazine on aviation. Oh, we'll buy you some sheets and some T-shirts that have airplanes on it. And that's as far as it went. They didn't really were aware of all these programs, the JROTC or Civil Air Patrol. My high school did offer some aviation classes and offered to get your PPL. But because English was my second language, they put me in like study hall and study skills. They're like, here you go, Ilma, sorry, that's all you get for electives. And then at the time I wasn't a US citizen, so it just seemed a lot of like hurdles to get to this pilot dream. So pretty slowly by the end of high school, the dream for aviation died off. I enlisted in the Air Force really just to get out of the house and get on my feet. My parents, Eastern European, pretty crazy. no cell phone, no boyfriends, no car. I'm like, oh my goodness, like get me out of here. So my stepdad was prior enlisted in the Air Force, and he's like, hey, you can enlist in the Air Force, do your minimum of 4 years, and you can use a GI Bill to get a free education. I had like a 3.0 in high school, not good enough to get a scholarship. And my parents were like, no, we can't really take that kind of burden on us and pay for your college. So Air Force was a way to get out of the house, get on my feet. And the rest was history. Just one open door after another, after another. So like I said, I started as a cook. Part of my processing was meeting my commander. And my commander was like, hey, would you like to go to school for free? Sure, why not? I'm 19 years old. Sign me up. Next thing I know, I got a package saying, hey, you've been accepted into the prep school. Give us an answer in 10 days. Would you like to go to the Air Force Academy prep school? Sure, why not? We'll see what happens. Oh, a year later, made it through prep school. Okay, I guess we're going to the Air Force Academy. And yeah, 4 years later, barely surviving academic probation, here it's time to put in your dream sheet. All right, I guess I'll put down pilot. We'll see what happens. Didn't expect to get pilot slot as it's very competitive. 2013, pretty much everyone that wanted a pilot slot got a pilot slot. All right, I guess we're going to pilot training.
That's awesome.
Let's see what happens. So we made it. I got the wings on my chest, so it's been quite the ride.
That's quite the journey. Backing all the way up, you might be the only person to describe a transatlantic flight from Frankfurt to Los Angeles as awesome. But that's so cool that that was kind of the hook, and then you're able, full circle, come back around. Now you got wings on your chest, flying around. How long were you enlisted? I know you said obviously you got the package. Do you want to go to school? I was going to prep school, but did you do your 4-year enlistment?
No. I didn't even do a year. So it was interesting. I went through 3 boot camps, 3 summers in a row. So 2007, 2008, and 2009. So I went to Lackland Boot Camp, Prep School Boot Camp, and Air Force Academy Boot Camp, 3 summers in a row, 3 birthdays in a row.
Nailing it.
So I think I was enlisted, less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and then went on to the prep school. So some folks say, hey, you're not a true prior enlisted because you haven't felt the pains, but I don't know. I flipped some burgers and some pancakes. I feel like I've been through it.
Yeah. Check the box. You can move on.
Check the box and move on. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So out of the Air Force Academy, get a pilot slot, off to pilot training. What was pilot training like for you?
Oh my God, it was so awful. It was very, very, very challenging. I was the only female in my class, and mentally I really struggled. And I guess that would be a good advice, that I would like to give to the listeners. So with my very unique and diverse background, Eastern European, English, second language, female, prior enlisted, a cook, I wasn't even like air traffic control. I was a cook. I felt like I just came from the bottom. So I felt like I didn't fit in, like I didn't belong there. And in my head, I just kept making excuses for myself, like, oh, I struggle with English, or I shouldn't be here. I didn't grow up playing video games. I struggled through Air Force Academy, so I'm not cut out for this. My personality is an alpha type. Therefore, I don't talk, I don't walk, I don't speak like a pilot. So the biggest thing was confidence. But after taking this road, I have learned that, they teach you how to be a pilot. You don't show up talking, walking like a pilot. They teach you, they train you, they give you the tools. You're just there for the ride, and you'll get all the tools in your toolbox. And, in the unique background, that just made me a better officer, because I can relate to my airmen in a different way.
Yeah. Do you think it was the environment that you were in that made like didn't make you feel like you were a part of it, or was it internal that was driving that?
It was definitely all internal. It was all in my head for sure. I just didn't know how to carry myself. I just didn't definitely struggled with the confidence. And, now that I'm an instructor, I actually tell my students all the time and share my story. Actually, I flew with a student today. He was really struggling with confidence, and he's like, I don't think I can make it through this program. I'm not used to being at the bottom of my class. And I'm like, hey, man, advice number one, fake it till you make it. So you just walk in and you're like, let's go fly. I'm ready. You don't show up to a game. You don't show up to a race already defeated. You show up stoked and ready to go. So even though you feel like, oh, I'm not really prepared or I'm not sure, mentally you have to be, set your mind to it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I said that I was doing a podcast interview the other day, and we were speaking kind of along the similar lines of, everyone struggles and everyone has different hurdles, right? Like your struggle might be early on and then mine might be later, right? But when you're going through it, like you're on your island by yourself, or that's what it can feel like. But I think it's important to know that usually not the first, and you're not going to be the last person to go through that.
Yeah, I learned that, now that I'm an instructor and I see the other side, everyone's struggling. Everyone's having a hard time with maintaining altitude, pitch and power, everything. But what the difference is that a lot of the folks just kind of fake it till you make it, walk out of the flight smiling, being able to laugh about their mistakes instead of just spiraling down and kind of being very hard on themselves. So yeah, and I just beat myself up, and that might be the Eastern European, the immigrant mindset. Oh, you did not perfect this. You don't belong here,
Ouch. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point too, is, fake it till you make it, but it's having that confidence, which is easier said than done. But I, like when I was teaching in T6s, like one of my favorite classes I went through, I think they constantly made fun of one another and themselves, right? Like everyone, like none of these guys are good, right? Yet, because they're fresh off the boat. Like, but it's
exactly. If you can just laugh about it, laugh at yourself. And that's something that we talk about here. How do you take feedback? It is really hard to sit there and your IP is just crushing you. How do you take the feedback? Well, I tell my students, just use humor, being able to kind of laugh at yourself and move on from it and walk away from it. It's all good.
Yeah, no doubt. So out of pilot training, you go off to the KC-135. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was
Tampa, Florida?
Oh, rough deal. Thank you. Yeah, someone's got to do it. How was that assignment?
It was difficult. We talk about being a pilot at the Air Force Academy. We build it up, and you're just like, all right, this is it. And ops tempo was crazy. I was not ready for it. So even though I was stationed in Tampa, Florida, we were gone all the time, didn't really get a chance to really enjoy Tampa. So as soon as I was done with Altus, had 6 flights under my belt, showed up to Florida, they're like, all right, here's your 3 warm-up flights and out the door. Deploy. Go ahead. Have fun.
Yeah.
So I felt like I learned how to fly on a deployment. So yeah, the ops tempo is very
What was
very
that? What
fast.
was that tempo like for you?
So it was 3 months on, 3 months off. But when you're back for the 3 months, you might be sent to red flag or hurricane evacuation. So it's definitely a lot of fun as a first lieutenant. Definitely really tough if you're trying to settle down and start a family, or if you start dating somebody. So I started dating my husband at the time. So it was just really difficult for a lot of the young folks to establish a relationship or a family. So that was the biggest hurdles for most. Other than that, it's a lot of fun, lots of hours. Get really familiar with Qatar, excuse me.
Yeah. That's what I think like most people don't realize too. Like I obviously love being a pilot. Being a pilot's great. Being a pilot in the Air Force is great, or any aviator for that matter. But in the current times, like the tempo is really busy. I think my first assignment F-16, I was home 4 months of the first 19 months. And that's just, and I think that's a copy and paste across most platforms. And that's something that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, and as a young, 20-some-year-old, you're like,
Yeah.
yes, travel the world, sign me up. Hashtag YOLO, hashtag jet life. And then after a year or two of that, it starts to weigh really like heavy on you. You're like, wow, I'm getting fat because I'm not eating and I'm traveling and I'm always tired and just life can kind of hit you.
Yeah,
So some
it's the reality of the Frankfurt to the Los Angeles transatlantic flight.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
real. Uh,
So yeah, ATC is a really good change of pace for sure. Kind of slow down, still get to do what you love, still get to teach,
yeah, I mean, and that's the
still
nice thing
get
about,
to yeah.
yeah, the nice thing is like there's a blend, right? Like usually, going to do another assignment, like instructing at a training base
Hmm.
is kind of the way to throttle back for a little bit before you go out and probably want to get back out to flying the 135 again. But let's talk about
Exactly.
the RPA. So you're out instructing at Randolph. What is a day in the life of an instructor in the RPA world, remotely piloted aircraft?
So here at ATC at Randolph, so URT undergraduate RPA training, and I teach RIQ portion, which is RPA instrument qualification. So for students going through the training, they will show up to their formal brief, just like in pilot training. They do the formal brief, we do the stand up, maybe ground safety, flight safety, and then get with their instructors and pre-brief their mission. We use the T6 simulator, so very similar profiles. We go through contact, instrument phase, and then cross-country phase, and they have one check ride at the end of it. It's the difference between UPT and URT is that because it's a simulator, we already know what the weather is going to be, and the profiles are very canned. And then you don't have crazy radio calls or something like non-standard kind of ruin your sortie like a
Yeah.
bird strike or something. So everything's very canned. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the
Everything.
epitome of being a pilot.
Yeah. So everything's very canned, which is really nice for them, but also we're going a super fast pace. Some of the GK general knowledge that we hit is getting into the weeds of the 202 Vol 3 filing requirements, alternates, how to hold, aim method, all the fun stuff, VDPs, departure procedures. So it's fast and furious.
How long is the course?
It will be 2 weeks of academics and then 2 months of flying, or almost 3 months of flying. So a total of 3 months. And then once they're done with RIQ check ride, and then they go to RFC, which they just go across the hall and do RPA fundamentals course where they get to fly like MQ9-ish sim. And then they get their wings. So they get their wings pretty quick within 5 months of being here.
Gotcha. It's still a lot. That's a lot of material to digest and process in that short time span. I remember going through, and like instruments for me was just like mind blowing. Like what an instrument, ILS, instrument landing system. Like to me, that was just such a it was probably like if I went to, Eastern Europe and I was having to speak another language, like it was mind boggling to me. So that's a quick pace, but when they finish up there, then they're out the door to like their initial qualification training. Is that correct?
Yeah, they go on to their FTU, which is Holloman, Syracuse, or March, or if they go RQ4s. So they'll either go to MQ9s or RQ4s, and then if they go to RQ4s, they go to Beale Air Force Base and do their FTU.
So from start to finish, when they show up at Randolph, how long does it take to go through Randolph and then get to their first flying assignment as a combat mission ready operator?
Yeah, great question. So we brief this all the time for all the visitors coming through here. It takes them, including DOS, so they actually go through DOS and they do cross country at DOS and they get about 39 hours at DOS. With DOS, URT, and then their FTU, they will be mission ready in less than a year. So these are second lieutenants, 24-year-old, 24, 25, 26-year-old. They're going to be aircraft commanders within a year, which is crazy. And then next to them, they're going to have a sensor operator flying who might be as young as 18 years old because they're straight out of boot camp. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So, if they're flying the MQ-9, they're going to be leading the mission. They're going to be talking to the troops on the ground. They're going to be using their Merc, and they'll be pulling the trigger and saving lives.
Yeah, that's a lot going on. And then obviously you're establishing the baseline there, teaching in the T6. You mentioned DOS, so DOS Aviation. I think they're probably flying DA-20s, a Diamond 20, just to get some airmen. You get some air literally underneath them. But really, when they're going through your course, that's the last time they'll be flying, like sitting in a cockpit as we traditionally think of it.
Yes. So at DOS Aviation, they go through like the fundamentals, airmanship, and it's important. They're like, well, why are they going through this if they're not going to be actually flying an aircraft? Well, they are. They're actually flying an aircraft that's across the world, and it might have a 3-second delay because it takes 3 seconds for the signal to get to the satellite and back to the aircraft. And plus, they can't feel the aircraft. So, if you're so focused on your GPS or writing notes on your lap and you don't have your aircraft trimmed out, and all of a sudden, you're in a descent, you can't feel that. So your cross check has to be so much better. Your situational awareness has to be actually much better. So yeah, DA-20s, they actually go through the manned flight. T6s here is purely all simulators. And then, their cockpits, ground control unit, I believe that's what it's called, is just a little room. It's a little box. Yep. And they have screens and they have a phone and you have somebody sitting next to you. So not a traditional cockpit, like you said.
And everyone who's going to the RPA, they start at Randolph, correct?
They will start at a DOS Aviation, followed by Randolph, followed by their FTU. Yes. So everyone will go through. Mm-hmm.
How many people go through a year, roughly?
500. So it's 500 pilots. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's probably like 488. Hopefully that's not classified. No,
yeah. It's probably on a sign somewhere outside the base, I would imagine, of the production.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, 558th is known for producing the most pilots in the world, I believe so. Because if you think about it, it takes us 3 months to produce, or it takes us 6 months to produce a pilot, where it might take a year at Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's significant. And the fact that what this program has done in just the last few years, as far as being stood up and evolved, again, because, I mean, RPA is relatively a new thing, in the big scheme of things.
Yes, very new. So 2010 is when the squadron got stood up. And we're just scrambling, what are we going to do? Oh, T6, we took their T6 program and we've been using it the last 10 years. Right now, we're at a point where we are rewriting the syllabus. We're trying to remove a lot of the T6isms that we teach them and try to combine RIQ and RFC and make it into a one program so that we can even produce more pilots in a shorter time. And just make it more efficient. A lot of the things in our syllabus right now is like doing PAR, ASR, high altitude approaches, a lot of how to ensure holding, like a lot of things that will not be needed in an RPA community.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, do they really need to know how to hold? I mean, pretty sure they just put in their little box and it orbits on its own. Yes, we would still want the airmanship, we still want the communication, aircraft control, situational awareness, CRM, all that good stuff. So we're looking at the syllabus right now and looking to rewrite the course to be more efficient.
What are some of the greatest challenges as far as just being an aviator for you, or was it going through pilot training, transitioning between different platforms? Because now you've flown, a couple different planes. What are some of the things that you've had to deal with, and how did you overcome those?
Ooh, challenges. All right, maybe we can talk about this. A big challenge for me was when I had some sinus issues at McDill. I developed awful sinus infections back to back for like entire year, had a sinus surgery, and it was mentally tough knowing that, my coworkers, my friends are deploying and flying and hacking the mission. Here's just Ilma being DNIF. So it was a long-term DNIF for like 3 years.
Wow.
And I learned a lot. It was quite the roller coaster. At first, you're like, sweet, I get a break because I need to recover from my surgery. And then you feel guilt. You're like, well, I need to go be hacking the mission. What am I doing here? And then I had to kind of refocus. This was my chance to actually learn how to be an officer. So I guess a challenge would be, we always say you're officer first, aviator second, but I didn't really know how to do this whole officer thing. So being DNIF for 3 years has been almost like a blessing now. I was put in exec shop, learned how to write OPRs. Then I moved PCS here, and I had an opportunity with Air Force recruiting squadron to do some recruiting trips. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to public speak. I was terrified of public speaking. And then I became a flight commander, learned how to lead and figured out what my leadership style is. And now I'm an ADO. So learning how to work with the APC, 19th Air Force, all that fun stuff. So I guess while being an aviator, the challenge was falling in love with the Air Force, and I guess I'm drinking a little bit of the blue Kool-Aid and getting really excited about things that most aviators don't get excited about. Like a lot of like the paperwork and the award packages and all that stuff. But yeah, I decided I would like to do 20 years in the Air Force. I kind of like this. Okay. So I drank a little bit of the blue Kool-Aid. So I guess the hurdle was the DNIF, and learning from it that, hey, even though I had a setback, I really thought I was going to do the 10 years, get out and go to the airlines. And now it allowed me to kind of realize I really enjoy leading. I really enjoy being an officer, and learn my strengths and taking advantage of all the awesome opportunities.
Well, yeah, fully embracing, I guess, the situation. Obviously easier said than done. I've had several buddies, and I think the one thing I've realized the older I've gotten is how fortunate I am, like knock on wood, no medical issues, but like there are those who have and those that will. And it's only a matter of time before you have something go wrong, where hopefully it's just something minor, but being able to deal with that, especially in a long-term situation. I know personally, like I would absolutely struggle in that environment. So it's really awesome to hear you're doing well and dealing with, you say a hurdle, I would say it's a significant hurdle because you became a pilot, and now you can't, necessarily fly in an aircraft right now. So
yeah, making the best of it. I think that's something that we can take away with anything in life. If you get stationed Del Rio, Texas, oh no, Cannon Air Force Base, hey, make the best of it. You were just like, oh, this really sucks.
Right.
Well, I don't know. There's always something. A closed door just means other open doors, other opportunities.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up the podcast here, if you've found 15-year-old Ilma walking on the streets, what would you tell her? Do you have any advice you'd give her?
Yes. So when I do my little speeches to middle schoolers or high schoolers, I like to show them my flight jacket. So the inside of my flight jacket is a pink lion. So a lot of the little girls think that you have to be cut out for the military, that you have to be cut out to be a pilot. Oh, you got to be alpha, you got to be this and that. I'm like, no, you can still be you. You can still be girly. You can still have a boyfriend. You can still, do the things that you love, and the rest will be taken care of. They'll send you through boot camp. They'll make you an officer. They'll make you an airman. And you'll go through pilot training. Oh my goodness, that sounds so intimidating. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Yeah, it is intimidating. You look at a cockpit and you're like, wow, that's a lot of switches. Well, the KC-135 cockpit, it took me 6 months of just ground training. So really, like, if you're passionate about something, you're like, I think I want to do this, just do it, and the training will take care of itself. So we'll put you through the training. We'll make you an aviator. We'll make you an officer. So don't let the things that scare you away, I guess.
Oh, I love it. And perfect way to wrap up the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story. Truly phenomenal. I know people are really going to enjoy hearing it. And again, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. See you.